Talk a little bit about what your life was like before the tornado, if you would.
Well, it was pretty simple. We had a good life. I was an engineer with the State Water Resources Board and doing interesting writing and studying as well as that. And we just had a nice house over by Washburn University, 1322 Lane Street, and everything was pretty peaceful, pretty nice.
And then June 8th, 1966 came around.
And that was a whole life-changing experience, not only for me, but for everybody else that was involved in it, I'm sure. But for me, it was doubly life-changing because a few days after I boarded up windows for a while, I sat down with my guitar to practice. I was kind of just really learning to play the guitar, and I all of a sudden was writing a song, which I'd never thought of doing in my whole life. I'd sung a lot. I'd sung since I was 12 years old, but I just learned to play the guitar a little later, and all of a sudden the song just popped out like in 5 or 10 minutes. And I thought, that's something. And then since then, I've had a lot of other songs that occurred about the same way. I don't have any discipline about writing songs. I don't sit down and say, well, I'm going to write a song. They just occurred to me. And some whimsical and some serious. And I've been able to have a nice sideline for a number of years of singing. I still do.
So it was a continued impact on your life then?
It was a life-changing experience. You know, they say that ill wind that blows nobody good, and of course it was a terrible disaster for a lot of people. And it wasn't really great for us either. We lived in a house without electricity for quite a while and all this, and our house was badly damaged, but it wasn't destroyed. But it was quite a trauma for all of us, the whole town. But out of that trauma came a whole new life for me in a way.
Sure. What about that day? Can you recall the events of the day for you?
Well, first of all, it seemed like kind of a strange day. We were going to go shopping, and we decided there was just something strange about the evening. It was kind of ominous. There had been a forecast of possible storms that I recall, and I'm very aware of tornadoes because I was in one on my uncle's farm in 1955. It was a small one, but it was very scary nevertheless, and we survived that one all right. But so I've always been a little cautious about storms, more than most people. But we decided not to go to the store. That's fortunate because that would have taken us right through the path of the tornado. And we were at home when the sirens blew off, and I knew immediately that we should just go right straight to the basement because the conditions were so ominous. I became sort of almost a weather expert after my recent childhood experience.
I'm sure.
And I kind of sensed that something was wrong, and I went down to the basement where we had an old sofa. It was a rustic old basement. It was an old house. And I turned over the sofa when I was listening to WIVW radio and hearing the description of where it was going across town. It was like it was drawing an arrow right to our house.
Mm-hmm. So
I thought, okay, that's it. And then when I heard it before the rest of the family did because I'd heard it before. The sound of the tornado is something that you can't describe. People try to describe it, but it doesn't really work. It's just a sound. I heard it and I said, there it is. And so then I tucked everybody under the sofa I turned over, and we sat there and prayed. Both times I was in a tornado, I said the prayer that Jesus said on the cross, Father, into your hand I commit my spirit. And I felt a sudden calm, you know, like everything was going to be okay. And then we started hearing, you know, all this crashing and banging. I expected to look up and see sky, you know, any minute, but we didn't. It didn't destroy the house. It just badly damaged it.
Did it feel like an eternity being down there during those 30-some minutes that the tornado was on the ground? Time
just kind of stood still. I think it's embedded in our makeup. You know, you can go. I can go back there. I'm right there right now. You know, I'm experiencing virtually right now. It's something that.
Tell me what you're seeing.
Well, I hear all the sounds, the crashing of glass, and this banging, and the roar, the incredible roar. It's like, well, like people have tried to describe it. I won't really. Thousands of trains or something, and the other one had been really loud too. That small one on our uncle's farm, but this one was louder. And I thought, oh boy, that's a really big one, you know. And I kind of just sat there and waited. And I felt the strange calm come over me, which is kind of hard to explain, but it did. And then, after it was all over, we went upstairs and started walking across the rug in the living room, which was not a carpet. It was a big, almost full room rug, and I started hearing crunching, and there was glass under the rug, you know, and we were, and then there were curtains blowing out the window that had blown out. Later, we found a whole bunch of my neckties that had blown out in the backyard and were all wrapped up in
Oh my.
and all kinds of strange things. And we went down the street, and everybody was in a daze, you know, walking around in a daze. That all comes out in my song, I think. And we walked into a house, a neighbor's house, and they had a phone that worked for some reason. I have no idea why that phone worked. So I was able to call my parents and tell them we were okay, because I knew they were going to hear about it. Then that phone quit working shortly after, and no phones in the neighborhood worked from then on.
Wow. A couple of miracles taking place.
Well, it did seem at times like that. Yeah, that, you know, that just a few houses away, they were completely destroyed. The next house had a great big tree on it. My car was kind of covered with limbs, but it turned out it really didn't appear to be damaged much, except the windshield had been so pitted that it was an old car, and I got totaled. You know, the windshield was pitted enough that just by the debris that had hit it. But we felt very fortunate. That's probably one of the overwhelming feelings. Then, like Mr. Rogers said, when disaster comes, you look for the helpers. From then on, everybody was helping. People were coming around, seeing if you're okay, and we were all seeing if each other was okay. And whenever I'd pick up some debris, a lot of slate from Washburn University was in my yard, little bitty pieces. Pick up a tin can, take it out to the curb, and somebody I'd never seen before would pick it up and take it away. It was pretty inspiring in a lot of ways. The reaction to the disaster was quite remarkable.
What about when you traveled throughout the path of the tornado afterwards? Do you recall anything specific about that as to how you felt or what you saw or the people that you spoke with?
It was all kind of a daze that night. We were all wandering around in kind of a daze. We were just being sure we were all okay, and all our neighbors were okay. And we kind of, you know, it's kind of a daze. I don't remember much about that night, except what I described in the song. But, you know, the fact is that over the days, then we did get out a bit. I think you had to check in when you drove back into your neighborhood to be sure you lived there. I believe that was true. But we went out and we saw things like the dollhouse on 17th Street, where the front of the house just collapsed completely and just left it looking like a dollhouse. Strange things happen in tornadoes. You know, like, for example, my guitar, which was new at the time, it's now 50 years old, I still play it. It was sitting there, just sitting out, and a cupboard fell over on one side of it, something else fell over on the other side of it, and it was perfectly okay. Our piano was perfectly okay, and yet other things were completely demolished. There was one large limb through the roof upstairs, and a bunch of smaller limbs where we had to patch up holes, a lot of windows out. It was, and then I worked on the 11th floor of the State Office Building at the time for the Kansas Water Resources Board, and after I went back to work in a few days, you could look out and see the path completely, all the way to Burnett's Mountain, and of course the other side you could see the damage to the State House roof. And you start hearing the stories, incredible stories that everybody had.
Any you'd like to share?
Well, one fellow that was the janitor at Washburn spoke about actually being lifted up in the air a little bit and not hurt.
Oh my.
And but everybody had a story, and there was so much going on, so much positive things going on. I think the Mayor Wright, and then Bob Harder was over working in East Topeka, and I learned later that the Mennonites from down around south central Kansas came. There it was, June, busy time of year. They just left their plows in the field, loaded their tractors, and came to East Topeka, poorest part of the town, started working right away. I heard that later, partly from Bob, who was over there working so many inspiring stories came out of it, and of course tragedies too. You know, people that didn't survive it.
I can see that you feel that even now.
Yeah, it is tough. My daughter was 4 at the time. My other daughter was 2. The 2-year-old doesn't remember much, but the 4-year-old remembers a lot. And one of the things that she says is whenever I sing my tornado song, she gets tears in her eyes yet to this day. Which I don't sing it a whole lot, but it means a lot to me.
And we're certainly going to ask you to sing it here in just a minute. We'd love to hear it. Besides music, do you feel that the tornado had an ongoing impact in your life in the way you approached things or what you did?
Yeah, really, both tornadoes did. I guess the first one was bad enough, and it did make you think, first of all, about all the people that came to help. Like Mr. Rogers said, you look for the helpers after the storm. We thought we would, you know, my parents lived just a quarter mile down the road, and I was down helping my uncle put on he was putting a grain elevator, a tin grain elevator on a foundation. We were working in that foundation. We decided it was getting pretty stormy. We better get out of there and go look. And we saw this funnel, and I said, "Is that a tornado?" And he said, "I think it is." So we went to the house. After it was all over, and the house was still there, it was badly damaged, but it was still there. We went out and we saw that grain elevator wrapped around a utility pole.
Wow. Now, was this in the 55 tornado?
Yeah, that was in the 55 tornado. So, and then I went running in the rain. Heavy rain followed, and I went running all the way down to my parents to be sure they were okay. And my uncle was following along as fast as he could go. I could go faster then. Now I would go much slower, but he was a little slower. We got down there. They were fine. They had gone to the basement. They'd heard the roar, but they didn't have any damage at all. And we went down to my uncle's farm. My dad said, "Oh, it'll take us weeks to clean all this up." The next day, all the neighbors from everywhere descended on that place and cleaned it up.
And so you saw a repeat, basically, of that in
yeah,
66.
helpers appear. They just appear. And some of these folks we hardly knew. It's quite, the random memories just come back to me about that one too. One older lady said, "Well, I don't know whether God was angry at you and sent the tornado or whether he was happy with you and had it veer a little just before it hit your house." And I looked at her and I thought, she's crazy.
Oh, why?
I think God just sets up things and it works. And sometimes we have to dodge it, the results of natural things that happen.
I'm sure it's given you a better appreciation just of life overall.
Well, it has. As a matter of fact, my wife and I are teaching our Sunday school class presently, and we started a segment on To Kill a Mockingbird, which is kind of interesting because the guy that opened it with the little videos said the main theme of To Kill a Mockingbird is brokenness. And so I started off, I talked about this tornado as a brokenness experience that led to something much greater for me personally, which is what the whole theme, I guess, of brokenness of Christ and the resurrection is.
Sure. We've been talking about your song. I'd love to hear it if you don't mind.
I think I could sing it. You know, I haven't been practicing much lately, and so I asked my daughter to play, but I will try to sing it. Do you want to start?
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
On the 8th of June, to Topeka town, a twister came roaring on the ground. 17 souls there breathed their last, mid splintering wood and breaking glass. The rest came out from their hiding place, looked out and saw the world's new face. With tears of grief or prayers of relief, breaking a path to the neighbor's door. The long night passed like a dreadful dream, with a cold west wind blowing and the sirens scream. Flickering candles made a brave glow, warming the souls who heard the wind blow. The sun came out on a battered land, lightened the path for each weary man, found a child's smashed toy, scattered pieces of joy, yesterday's home, now broken and blown.